The sun hung low, bronzing the dust as it shimmered across the auction yard like a mirage. Wind tugged at Edelyn's faded muslin skirt, lifting it just enough to show her bruised knees and the scab on her shin. Her hand stayed firm on the small boy's shoulders in front of her, though her palms were sweating through the linen. No name on the roster, no kin to claim her. Just her, a wooden crate of cookware, and a 4-year-old child who wasn't even hers. Clayton squinted up at the crowd from beneath his wide straw hat, one that dipped nearly over his eyes. His voice came small but clear. "She can cook, sir. Please take her in." Silence fanned out like prairie fire. Boaz Callahan stepped forward, boots thudding in the quiet. The crowd split like a river against a rock. He was massive, shoulders like split beams, face bearded and wind-worn, hat casting a long shadow over eyes no one could quite read. Folks said the widowed rancher hadn't smiled in years. His arms were crossed. Then slowly, one hand dropped to the coin pouch at his hip. Etta did not lift her gaze, not fully, but she felt his size fill the space between her and everything else. The auctioneer cleared his throat. $1 for the woman, 2 for the cook stove and the boy. "She ain't mine," Etta murmured. "I am," Clayton corrected, his tiny fingers wrapping around her wrist. Bo dropped $5 silver on the crate. The metal clinked sharp, final. "Bring her out to Callahan Ranch," he said, then turned without a second look. Etta blinked hard, lowering her chin. She could still feel the murmurs clinging to her like grit. She ran from a good match once. That's the one whose sister married instead. She's trouble, just pretty enough to fool a lonely man. Words she thought she'd left behind in Tennessee. The wagon ride was long and mostly silent. Clayton's head rested in her lap, his small body curled like a question mark. Etta didn't ask where they were going. She didn't care about the land or the house. All she needed was a stove, a roof, and a place to keep the boy warm. The ranch was larger than she'd imagined. Not grand, just wide and weathered, with a wraparound porch and 2 children watching from the upstairs window. Girls, identical, maybe 3, their faces pale against the glass. Bo helped her down, but didn't meet her eyes. "There's the kitchen. The girls eat at 5. They like cornbread." Then he turned and walked inside. Etta stood there for a beat too long, fingers resting on the iron skillet she'd brought from her last post. The door creaked behind her. She entered the kitchen like she might spook it, one slow footstep at a time. It smelled like ash, dry flour, and something older, something lonely. By nightfall, the stove was lit, beans soaking, dough rising under a cloth. Clayton sat on a folded quilt near the hearth, legs crossed, eyes wide. The girls hadn't come down. Bo sat at the table like a mountain, eating in silence, forks scraping slow. He didn't say thank you. She didn't ask for it. After supper, she washed dishes while the light slanted red across the floor. The window wouldn't stay open. She struggled with it, elbow deep in soap, pushing against the warped frame. Bo appeared behind her without a word. His hand brushed hers as he pressed the frame up, nailed in a shim, and stepped back. The whole act took 10 seconds, but her heart pounded for 5 full minutes afterward. That night, Etta laid a thin blanket over Clayton. He whispered, "We're staying, right?" She stroked his hair. "We'll stay as long as we're welcome." She didn't sleep. Not well. The walls made strange sounds, old wood shifting, wind whispering things no one wanted to hear. And her dreams were full of her sister's wedding dress and the fat rancher she'd once rejected, a man who may or may not have been Bo. Morning found her at the stove again. She cooked like her mother had, slow and steady, filling the room with scent before the sun was up. The girls crept down the stairs in their nightgowns, barefoot and silent, peeking in. She saw them in the corner of her eye and slid a plate of warm biscuits onto the edge of the table, not saying a word. They sat, ate. One glanced up once. Etta offered a crooked smile. No one smiled back, but no one left either. Later, while hanging wet dresses on the line, Etta hummed. It was a low tune, barely more than breath, something southern and aching. Clayton ran through the tall grass, chasing a chicken he'd named General Custard. The girls watched again, now from the porch steps. One of them clutched a charcoal drawing. By noon, she handed it to Etta. A sketch of a woman with long hair and two tiny figures holding her skirt. Eda's voice caught. Is that me? The child nodded. Bo sat on the porch, whittling, head low. Eda turned away before he could see the tears she swallowed. It was Pearl Callahan who came the next day, Bo's sister, all starch and sneer, with a voice like vinegar and a nose built for sniffing sin. She entered the kitchen uninvited, sniffed the cornbread cooling on the sill, and narrowed her eyes. So you're the cook, she said. Eda dried her hands, offered a shallow nod. You ran from a rancher once. Don't think we don't know. I know what I did, Eda whispered. And I know what I'm doing now. Pearl's gaze swept her up and down. You'll fool him for a while, but don't think this place is yours. He deserves better than what's left of a woman. The screen door slammed behind her. Eda didn't cry. Not then. Not when a broom handle snapped in her grip or when she dropped the tin of lard. But that night, when the house went still and Clayton dreamed soft in the corner, she crept to the window, pressed her forehead to the cool pane, and whispered into the silence. I just want to be useful. Just that. She didn't hear Bo's footsteps outside her door. She didn't know he'd paused there, one hand hovering over the knob, his breath held like a secret. He turned and walked away before she could ever know he was listening. A few weeks passed like water through cheesecloth, slow, steady, seeping into the bones of the house until the scent of Eda's cooking became something expected, like sunrise. The twins started sitting beside her now, not across. One pressed dandelions into her apron pocket without a word. The other mimicked her humming while they shelled peas. Clayton helped in the garden with his tongue poking from the side of his mouth in concentration. Digging neat rose the way she taught him, gentle as prayer. Bo was always there, too, just not quite with them. He moved through the house like a shadow, twice the size of man, fixing fence posts, hauling flour sacks in at dawn, appearing behind her to hand her a pan she couldn't reach. He never lingered, but she felt him, his presence pressed into every corner like the slow weight of snowfall. Every morning, she'd find a fresh mug of coffee waiting for her on the porch rail. Black, still steaming. He never said he made it. She never asked. Still, silence isn't safety. Silence can rot beneath you like softwood. It was at the mercantile in town that she heard them again, the gossips. Two women hunched over calico bolts like crows over scraps. Callahan took her in, they say. Didn't even check her past. Fool. She's a looker, that's for sure. But she's after his deed. She ran from a match once. Couldn't even commit to that. Eda turned away before they saw her, clutching the sack of barley to her chest. But Bo had heard, too. He'd come to fetch nails and left with jaw tight and eyes colder than she'd ever seen. That night, the house was too quiet. No clinking of forks, no shared glances. Just the sound of his chair scraping back too soon and his boots heading toward the door. She followed him out to the barn, fists clenched. I didn't come here to trap you, she said, voice shaking. I know what people say. He didn't turn, just leaned against the post, arms crossed over that broad chest like he was trying to keep something inside. I bought you to cook, he said evenly, not to answer for the past. Her lips trembled. Then why did you look at me like you were trying to know me? Why do you leave coffee on the rail every morning? The silence returned, heavier now. He sighed. I got two girls who don't speak much in a house full of ghosts. I didn't need more trouble. She swallowed hard. You think I came here with some scheme? I had nowhere else to go. I didn't even ask you to take me in. That boy did. His shoulders dropped just enough for her to notice. You don't have to stay, he said finally. If you're just surviving, Eda, you don't owe us more than you've already done. She stared at him then, the air between them thick with dust and something deeper. I stayed because no one ever needed me the way they do now, she whispered. And that includes you, even if you won't say it. Then she turned and walked back inside, heart thudding in her throat like hoofbeats over frozen ground. It wasn't 2 days later that Clayton coughed himself hoarse at the supper table, his eyes glassy and his little chest rattling with every breath. Fever climbed fast. Eda sat up with him all night, laying cold cloths on his brow, holding his tiny hand while he wheezed. By morning, his skin was hot as a stoveplate. She saddled the mare before the sun rose fully, wrapped Clayton in a shawl, and rode for town with wind slicing at her cheeks. Bo followed, silent and tight-jawed, just far enough behind that she didn't know. At the doctor's, the man wouldn't open the door. A fevered boy and a woman I don't trust? I've heard enough, Miss McAllister. Etta was crying now, shoulders bent, one hand pounding the door, the other cradling Clayton. And then Bo stepped forward. He didn't say a word, just reached into his pocket, pulled out a handful of silver, and set it on the stoop. His frame filled the doorway like a barn wall. The doctor opened the door. Later, as Etta rocked Clayton on the porch bench, his fever finally breaking, Bo brought her a cup of broth and crouched beside her. His hand hesitated near hers, but didn't touch. "You didn't have to follow me," she said softly. "I did," he replied, just as quiet. "Didn't want you out here alone." The moon was round above them. The twins slept inside, Clayton snoring like a pup at her side. Bo stayed kneeling longer than he needed to, looking at her face like it was a thing he didn't quite understand but didn't want to stop watching. The next morning, he wasn't in the kitchen or the barn, not even in the field. It wasn't until sunset that she saw him, out back, hammering boards into the frame of something strange beneath the cottonwood tree. By dusk, it was finished, a porch swing, wide enough for three, cedar-scented and soft-edged, smooth from sanding. When she came out holding a bowl of sliced apples, she paused. "I had one like that once," she said. He wiped his brow. "Figured maybe you'd like one again." She ran her fingers over the wood grain, slow. "You didn't buy me to love you." Bo's eyes met hers, that storm sky color softened by dusk. "No," he said, "but I might have started to anyway." Neither of them moved. Crickets sang. A breeze tugged at her apron ribbon. Inside, one of the girls laughed, a sound like bells. Then the other joined. Etta smiled. She stepped onto the swing, sitting gently. The twins ran out barefoot, climbed into her lap, their weight familiar and warm. Clayton came next, drowsy but grinning. He flopped beside her like he belonged there. Bo stood in the doorway for a long beat, arms crossed, watching them as the swing creaked softly. She didn't speak, just reached out, fingers open, an invitation. And for the first time in years, he walked forward. Not as a buyer, not as a giant trying to stay unseen, but as a man who might finally be ready to be known. In the last light of day, as the swing moved back and forth, slow as breath, Etta leaned her head back, eyes closed. She didn't need a promise. Not yet. She just needed to feel like she was no longer something someone regretted taking in.